everyone. My name is Autumn Pippenburg, and I'm your host for The Art of Giving, a guide to nonprofit success. And we have a guest today. We have Sarah Spunt with Lift Chicago, who is going to be talking about program development and evaluations for nonprofits. I'm really excited to have you on because you've been in program development, so you know exactly what we're trying to accomplish here today. We've had a lot of people ask what types of programs they should be developing with their nonprofits in order to collect the right data, to get the grant, to, and just ultimately serve the community in the ways that the community needs. So I'm really happy to talk with you about all this. Can you tell us a little bit about Lift Chicago and also just about yourself and the role that you play with the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to be here with you today. I'm Sarah Spunt. I'm the executive director of Lift Chicago. We work with parents with young children on economic mobility, looking at building financial strength, social connections, and personal well-being, or what we call hope, money, and love at Lift. And so I'm excited to share more about what we do, definitely dive into the program design and evaluation. I love data, so excited to talk all about that.
Awesome. Amazing. So you're the executive director now, but you were in program development.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So can you tell us about what that role looked like for you in program development when you were there?
Yeah. So I've been at Lyft for about 10 and a half years and in the executive director role for a little over 4 years. But prior to that, I was our program director. And about a year into our work, we zeroed in our focus to work with parents with young children. So now we work on breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty. So we believe wealth is passed down from generation to generation, and similarly poverty is passed down from generation to generation. And when we're looking at breaking that cycle, we found in our data that investing in families, particularly while their children are young, is where you get the most outcomes for the family and drive the most impact. And so as the program director in 2015, I led our redesign process to look at what our program looks like to serve parents with young children. And I'm happy to walk through what that process looked like. But it was a very community-centered approach, doing a lot of community listening, talking to parents from across the city, and really just trying to understand what their hopes and dreams are for them and their children, and what systems of support do they need to get there. And our process was very much driven by the voices of our parents and their insights. And from there, we developed a program and with the metrics and things that go along that as well. And so, happy to.
So you would say that, definitely an important step before developing a program is to talk with the beneficiaries of that program to see what it is that they need before, implying what they need. You're asking them what they need and then delivering that.
Yeah. I would say 100% going to the community that you are working with or partnering with or serving and seeing what is it that they hope for in a type of service. And sometimes the program already exists, right?
Yeah.
And so the first part of a needs assessment is really seeing what type of programs are already out there, and is this program necessary for development, or is there someone else already doing this work that we can partner with? Or if that work isn't there, is there a unique gap that we are looking to fill? And then very specifically, if you're working in communities across the city, trusting and listening to the community members that you're serving, because ultimately the people that you're serving have all of the answers. They are experts in their own lives and oftentimes really don't need an outside person coming in. But if you are working in a nonprofit and developing some type of program, understanding what that could be of being that outsider and how you help elevate the voices and the needs of the community through a design process for the program.
And I'm sure you get a lot of needs. So how do you prioritize what needs you're going to focus on with your programs?
Yeah. So when we were designing this program, it was looking at how to best support parents, particularly parents with young children. And so there's two things that we looked at deciding this. One is understanding how family economic mobility works for parents with young children, and what that means not just for the parent, but for the child as well, because we're talking about breaking intergenerational cycles of poverty. And so through our focus groups and through research, so getting both community voice and what the empirical data is telling us, we knew that it was important to look at income potential. Now, yes, when you're talking about breaking cycles of poverty, that seems obvious, right? Like you want to look at increasing people's income. But there was data out there that showed that if you increase a parent's income by $3,000 a year, that yields a 17% potential income increase for that child. So a small increase of income for that parent can equal like tens of thousands of dollars for that child. And so looking at how do you help stabilize the parent economically now to put the child on a path to greater economic mobility. And that is through our focus groups what parents wanted. They wanted to provide the best life for their kid. They wanted connections to jobs with livable wages, post-secondary education, all of those things that help you with increasing their income. And so that's where we developed the financial strength component of our program.
I love the idea of focus groups, and you're the first person to really touch on that. And, because we ask, nonprofit people all the time, how do you come up with the need? How do you reach out to the community? And not all of the time do people have those answers. Sometimes it's just from, physically working in the community or, doing service work, but other times it is more structured. So it sounds like a focus group for you is collecting people within the community that would be benefiting from your services and asking them what the direct need is. And then maybe is that just kind of accumulating everybody's answers and saying, 9 out of the 10 said this and 8 out of the 10 said this, and these are the things we're going to focus on, or does it work differently than that?
Yeah, so we did focus groups in a variety of settings. One was in early education settings, so Head Start programs. We also worked with some other community-based organizations and a couple of elementary schools. And what we have found were not necessarily like these parents, 9 out of 10 said this, but what were the trends? And overwhelmingly, the trends were very specifically, and I remember a quote from one of the parents is like, I want to work on my finances. I want to increase my savings. I want to decrease my debt. I want to own a home one day. Like really big picture dreams that they had for them and their children. But I don't need help budgeting. I know how to budget my money down to every last cent because I lived on such a limited income. I need access to a higher paying job. And so that's where we looked at combining both the financial capabilities of looking at like short-term goals like savings and decreasing debt, and the long-term goals like preparing to purchase a major asset, while also looking at helping parents increase their income and income potential. The other thing that was unique that we found was parents just needed access to more cash. And so,
don't we all?
Yeah. But very specifically, at the time, and this was like before COVID, so the numbers might even be increased now, but 4 out of 10 Americans didn't have $400 in their savings account if an emergency came up, right? And so we also saw that some small financial setbacks, we're talking about an unexpected parking ticket or a higher utility bill,
or something,
a car repair could spiral a family and be making a lot of great progress to their goals and then set them back. So we also started to provide unrestricted cash to families in our program, and that at that time that was unique. There was not a lot of organizations in the country doing that, and so it also helped with some of the more conversations you're hearing around guaranteed income right now and things like that. But those two things, the wanting to make more money, need access to a little bit of a slack fund, will help me reach my goals. And what we're finding from the data that we collect is it's working really well. On average, parents in our program increase their income by $22,000 a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, that's some people's annual salaries.
That's the difference of deciding like, can I make rent this month or put food on the table and send my kid to an after school program
So you can work. Right.
or go on a family trip and like really address, like we've been talking a lot about what we do on the financial strength side, but there's also a whole other component around well-being and social connections
Right.
because money is one thing. You also need like the connections and confidence
Right.
while reaching your goals.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as you're working with the community in these focus groups, is it easy to get, to go astray from your mission? How do you stay so focused, on the original mission that you set out to do when you're hearing all these things,
Yeah, there's two tools that help with that. One is a logic model, and another is a theory of change. And so those are really data-driven things that look at what, at first, like from a logic model perspective, what are like the key outcomes that you are looking to achieve? So for us, we're looking at increasing income, decreasing debt, savings, persisting through higher education, and increasing well-being. So that's kind of like when you think of a logic model, those are the outcomes. And then you look at what your outputs are, right? So what are all the things you're doing to help families get to those outcomes? And having those pieced together. So when we're thinking through what elements of our program do we want to do, we do a lot of family engagement events, right? Does that help? Does that align with the logic model and an outcome? Yes, we want to increase social connections and social capital. Are we going to do this random art after school program that right? No, that is not connected to what we do because there's already great organizations doing that, and it helps us decide, yes, we're going to do that, or no, we're not, by going back to like what are key areas of like input and outputs that we want to do to help.
Is this form that is this something you could share with people? Is this something we could, post, or they could Google, or
Yeah, there's, I could share our logic model and theory of change, but it's also something that's very easily Googleable.
Sure.
There's also a lot of, like university programs, so a lot of schools of social work and public policy programs and things like that, that often do these type of things for student projects. And so you could reach out to someone at a local university to see if a student is interested, if they're doing a class project on putting together a logic model for a nonprofit, and what does that look like.
Okay. Yeah, we'd like to provide, resources. If you have a suggestion, we want to be able to, follow up with that. So I think that's great, because I've personally never heard that. I mean, we've used other tools, similar, but never heard that direct one. And then, I'm sure as you get a program moving along, things could possibly need to be changed mid-implementation.
Yeah.
So have you ever had to deal with that? And, can you give us an example of why that happened and why you chose to change the plan to better fit the program and the needs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we currently work with Masters of Social Work students as our coaches during their field placements, which meant when working with the parents in our program, parents were getting multiple coaches during their duration of being in our program for 2 years. And through our member feedback surveys, because we ask our parents their opinion on the program quite often, that was one of the biggest pain points. Was we love the program, we're feeling connected to our coach, and then they leave. And so what could we do to help increase the continuity of care? So we moved to a year-round paid internship, where we still are working with Masters of Social Work students, but they're with us for an academic year. And then we also targeted our recruitment to be in September and October. So when you are placed with the coach, it is right when they start their internship, and then you only transition a coach one time instead of 3 or 4 times potentially based on when you enroll in the program.
Okay.
So that's one example. Another was on like the member and coach connectivity, because that is something that we measure. As we found when we went virtual during COVID, people still had a really trusting relationship with their coach, but they didn't feel connected. They didn't feel connected to their coach. So they didn't feel connected to Lyft. And so as things started to open up, we started to do more family engagement events, more like group coaching in person so they could connect with other parents and connect with their coach, and then offer more in-office touch points if they wanted to come into the office for their coaching session instead of being virtual.
Okay. So, you have an office then in Chicago?
Yes, we are located in Bronzeville.
Okay. Do you have any other offices around the United States?
We do. We're a national organization. We're headquarters here we're headquarters in DC, and then offices in New York, LA, and Chicago.
Okay.
And then we work with organizations across the country in training and technical assistance. So we train other organizations to infuse our coaching model into the work that they're doing with families.
Okay. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about, your program development side. I just want to kind of touch on the executive director side and just what that looked like, what that morphosis looked like for you. Because there are some organizations, watching that are growing and expanding and wanting to move people up within the organization. And I think it would be helpful to hear how it happened for you and any suggestions that you have with that.
Yeah. For me specifically, I think some of the best advice I got when I was hired as our program lead came from our chief program officer at the time at our national office. And she bluntly said to me, if you ever want to be more than a program director, you need to learn how to fundraise.
Yeah.
Right? Which is scary for a lot of program people. Like, you have program, you have fundraising, you talk, but like fundraising does their stuff, program does their stuff. And I find that with the right tools, program staff are actually your best fundraisers. And I'm not just saying that because of my program background.
I couldn't agree more.
But
yeah,
continue.
Yeah.
There's a level of understanding of the program and being able to pull direct impact that a donor might be interested in a way that someone who is not so close to the program could understand. So because I got that great advice, I worked really closely with our executive director at the time to start to build that skill set. And then when he transitioned out of the organization, I was ready to step into the ED role. And it was a pretty smooth transition because I already was trying to build that skill set.
Yeah. I mean, how do you ensure that your programs are, sustainable as a program director? Because I know how they're sustainable from a fundraising standpoint, from the ED role. But, when you're a program director and you're coming up with all of these ideas and, and pitching them to the organization to execute them, how do you as a program director know if they're sustainable or not from a financial standpoint?
It's one of the things that you have to it's a really good question because my gut is saying like it really depends year to year sometimes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, and so it is important to obviously like build up your reserves and have some like just savings around general operating cash. So in case a grant that you normally get does not come through, you have that like financial safety net, like similarly when we talk about with our parents and having our own emergency savings, like organizations need their emergency savings as well. The other thing is being continuously learning and being adaptable. In 2018 is when we decided to also really focus on parents who are pursuing post-secondary education and higher education attainment. And it turns out we are really good at that. Parents who are in our program complete their degrees at a higher rate than the national average.
Wow.
But that also led to new funding opportunities that were focused on post-secondary education attainment that were not in a workforce development space or a financial capabilities space. And so
were these concepts and ideas coming from the program department?
Yeah,
essentially?
It was coming both from the program department and our evaluation department, which is in our program department, because we saw the trends of our parents expressing like a desire to either go back to school for a degree or some type of certification that would help advance their career. And even though college is expensive and continues to be expensive, it's still the number one ROI of a personal investment that you can do to help increase your income and earning potential over time. Now, it doesn't always have to be a traditional 4-year degree. There's a lot of great programs at city colleges that we partner with that are both degree and certification that yield high earnings. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional 2 or 4-year degree, but it helps a great deal in terms of parents' long-term career goals.
Yeah. I mean, for us, our program department really drives our fundraising. And I think every organization works a little bit different. But for Art of Giving, we obviously look at our finances and say, yes, we can continue running these programs, but we don't necessarily go out and look for more funding until the program department says, hey, we've noticed that this needs to be changed. We need to add schools, we need to add our programs in libraries, we need community centers, and they kind of drive our, funding department to say, okay, we need to fundraise more, we need to find a grant out there, and so I don't know if, it works the same for Lyft Chicago, but that's, how we do it is our fundraising goals are set for the year for our current programs, but then our program department are usually the ones that are like, hey, we need more money because we have these programs that we want to launch. Yeah,
we do it. I think our program leads what we are going to implement and what we are going to ask for in fundraising. We're not going to go out and try to get a grant to then create a new program in-house. I feel like that is a very slippery slope of like how to maintain operations and sustainability. But we do look at multi-year too. So like not just what do we need this year, but what are we going to need next year, 2 years down the road, 5 years down the road. And when we're thinking of like our strategic plan and like strategic planning, matching our potential revenue with like what our finances are going to be. And so if we know our current operating budget right now in Chicago is $1.5 million, with our new strategic plan that's over the next 3 years,
But we're talking small organizations, right? So when a small organization has, say, $200,000 in funding, right? Which is where Art of Giving's at, right? So we're a small organization, we have $200,000 in funding a year. That funding is, essentially taking care of the programs that we already run. If we want to launch new programs, we have to find new funding.
Right.
So I understand from, a large organization standpoint, that is a slippery slope. Yeah. But for our beginners out there who are kind of, trying to figure this out, all I'm saying is, I think the program department does drive the need for more funding. Without programs, we don't need funding.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think...
But those new programs are probably aligned with your mission and the outcomes you want to achieve and things like that.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't go after 100%. What I'm saying is, like, don't go after a grant that just seems like...
it's money.
It's money and like...
Absolutely.
We can do it and there's mission creep and all of that stuff because you want... Like, if you're creating a new program... And it sits within like your realm of expertise and what you do, then yes, like go after that new grant.
Go after that new grant. Yeah. And I think
excuse me.
For most of the smaller organizations, the grants that are obtainable for them are, not necessarily just 1 year grants. They can be 1 year, 2 year, up to 5 year grants. Right. And they might in the first year go after 10 grand and then the second year go to 25 and the third year go to 50. But that's because their program development is growing. Yeah. And I think that that's totally healthy and normal for a smaller organization. Well, we're running out of time and I have one more question that I want to ask you because you seem to be a wealth of knowledge about this. I'm just wondering what some of the, challenges that you face? Because we've heard a lot of the good things, and this is how we've had to, change things up along the way and, to make it work. But have you ever ran into like a big challenge with, program development meeting, financial resolution? Like, has there ever been an issue where you've had to say, okay, we have to pull back because there isn't the finances there, or the community just doesn't need this, or we thought the community did, but they want something different?
Yeah. I would say that's kind of the current state that we are in right now. And so we've been running our coaching program for the past 9 years, and it's going really well, but we're at our capacity of how many people that we can serve. And really, we might be needing to like decrease the number of people we can serve, because there is a way for us to scale by partnering with other organizations, like I said, through our training and technical assistance, because there's already a lot of organizations that work one-on-one with families that want to infuse economic mobility into the work that they do. So that is the one aspect of it. We're also finding when we're thinking about programs and economic mobility, the work that you do individually is great, but there's a lot of systems issues at play too when it comes to breaking the cycle of poverty. And so needing to also look at policy and advocacy and how we invest our time programmatically and there as well.
Yeah. I feel like that slows us all down.
Yeah.
So before we go, where can people find you? Give us your website, and if you have any events coming up that we should know about.
Yeah, our website is whywelift.org, and you can find my contact information on there. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And then we are celebrating 25 years of serving the city of Chicago on May 8th.
That's a long time.
I know. So more details to come on that. But if interested, again, my contact information's on our website. And I can share the logic model with you so you can post that.
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. I'd love to see, just a new tool to use. There's so many out there, you know, and it's always just good to hear what other nonprofits are actually using.
Yeah.
Not just what's, marketed to nonprofits. Right. So yeah, and for some of us, young organizations, it's always great to get a tool like that passed down, But yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom on all of this. Obviously the nonprofit sector is near and dear to my heart, and as to, everyone watching. So being able to hear from somebody that is knowledgeable about this stuff and learn from them is really important. So we value your time and, the time it took to come out and to meet with us. So thank you so much for joining us. And
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Please reach out if you want to learn more.
Perfect. They will. All right. Have a good one.